You cannot just throw us out. This is my home. How dare you? You issued this eviction illegally. As you can see from this evidence, you have violated your own bylaws multiple times. The evidence is conclusive. I suggest we finalize the eviction immediately.
I want to tell this story slowly because even now, when I think about it, I can still feel that tightness in my chest. The kind you get when something feels wrong, but you can't explain it. When life looks normal on the outside, but on the inside, there is a storm building quietly. My story began on a peaceful Monday morning. Nothing felt out of place. The air was cool. The sun was soft, not too bright. I had just made tea and stepped outside to take in a bit of fresh air before starting my workday. It was a small routine I had grown to love. But that morning, something else was waiting for me. Taped right in the center of my front door was a white paper. It wasn't folded. It wasn't tucked politely like most notices. It was slapped there with purpose. Almost like the person who put it wanted me to feel something before I even read it. I remember staring at it for a whole second before touching it. My first thought was probably another HOA reminder. Annoying, but not serious. But when I pulled it off and began reading, my stomach tightened. My throat dried. Because the words in bold at the top were words I never imagined seeing. Notice of eviction. I froze. Eviction? Me? For what? I blinked several times, thinking maybe I misread it. Maybe it was a joke. Maybe it wasn't even for me. But no, my name was printed clearly. My home address too. And below it, some vague explanation about multiple community violations and failure to correct ongoing issues. My mind started racing. I had no violations. I paid every HOA fee on time. My yard was clean. My trash cans were always stored properly. I followed every written rule, sometimes more carefully than necessary. I read the paper again, slowly, line by line. The more I read, the more confused I became. Nothing made sense. It was almost like the notice was written by someone who didn't know the actual rules or didn't care. At the bottom was a signature. Melissa Green, HOA board member, and that was when the real fear began. Because Melissa wasn't just any neighbor. She lived 3 houses down. Always acted like she owned the entire street. Always watching everyone. Always commenting. Always criticizing. Always complaining. Everyone knew she loved authority. She loved rules. She loved control. But eviction? For my own home? This wasn't just control. This was power. And she was trying to use it against me. I walked inside and sat at my kitchen table, holding that paper with shaky hands. It felt unreal. I kept asking myself the same question. Why me? I wasn't loud. I didn't host parties. I didn't fight with neighbors. I minded my own business. Honestly, I was the kind of resident HOAs usually loved, quiet, responsible, predictable. So why would she target me? I spent the next hour checking my email, searching my mailbox, reviewing every message I had received from the HOA in the past 6 months. There was nothing. No warnings, no complaints, no reminders. This eviction notice came out of nowhere, and that's what made it feel even more threatening. HOA rules required a written warning, a second notice, a fine, a correction deadline, a final notice. Only after all of those steps could the HOA pursue stronger action. And even then, the HOA president had to sign off, not an individual board member. Melissa had bypassed every single rule. That afternoon, I walked around my house, checking everything. My lawn, perfect. My bushes, trimmed. My driveway, clean. My porch, clear. I even checked the side of my house, near the AC unit, where sometimes leaves pile up. Nothing. There was no violation. But the more I walked, the more I noticed something else. My security camera, the one facing the front yard, had a new recording from early morning. I clicked on a clip. There she was, Melissa, walking straight to my door at 6:12 a.m., looking around, pulling the paper from her folder, and taping it to my door. No hesitation, no envelope, no knock, just taped and left. Watching the footage made everything heavier. She wasn't just sending a notice. She was delivering a message. A personal one. one meant to intimidate. Later that evening, I saw her standing at the end of her driveway talking to someone on the phone. She kept glancing in my direction. She wasn't even trying to hide it. It felt calculated, almost like she wanted me to see her watching. And for the first time, my home, the place where I always felt safe, started to feel uncomfortable, like I was being observed, judged, and trapped. I didn't sleep well that night. My mind kept replaying the image of that paper on my door. I wanted to believe there was a misunderstanding, some clerical error, a simple mistake, something fixable. But deep down, something told me this was intentional, and I needed help. The next morning, before doing anything else, I called my lawyer, Daniel. He had helped me once before with a small property issue, and he always had a calm, steady voice. The kind of voice that makes you feel like everything will be all right. I didn't expect what he said, though. When I explained the situation, he didn't sound confused. He didn't sound surprised. Instead, he sighed and said quietly, "All right, I think it's time we talk." His tone told me everything. Something was already going on, something he hadn't told me yet. We met that evening at his office. It was getting dark, and the quiet hum of the city outside made the whole moment feel heavier. When I sat down, Daniel already had a folder on the table, a thick one. He looked at me for a moment before speaking. "You're not the only one she's targeted." The words hit me like a punch. He opened the folder, and there it was. Printouts, screenshots, timelines, statements. Months of behavior. Patterns. Complaints she filed on others. Rules she broke herself. Instances where she overstepped her authority. Moments where she abused her position. And near the end, my name. Highlighted. Daniel leaned back and said, "I've been keeping an eye on her because I suspected she'd eventually cross the line. And now she has." In that moment, I realized this wasn't random. It wasn't accidental. She had chosen me. And now, this story was no longer about a fake notice. It was about why she wanted me gone, and how far she was willing to go to make it happen. When I left Daniel's office that evening, I walked to my car slowly. The folder he showed me, the pages, the evidence, everything kept replaying in my mind. It felt strange to know that someone had been watching my situation long before I even realized there was a problem. But what felt even stranger was understanding that Melissa didn't just wake up one day and decide to target me. She had been building toward this, step by step, quietly, confidently, as if she believed no one could stop her. I sat in my car with the engine off, staring at the steering wheel for a long few seconds. My hands felt cold. My heart felt heavy. And for the first time since this whole thing started, I felt something beyond fear. I felt anger. Not explosive anger. Not loud anger. The quiet kind. The kind that sits in your chest and makes you breathe a little harder. The kind that comes when you realize that someone has tried to take away something precious. Your home, your peace, your security, and they did it for their own reasons. Their own agenda. Their own satisfaction. I drove home, and the neighborhood felt different. Houses looked the same. Lawns looked the same. Cars were parked in the same driveways. But something inside me felt shifted, like the street had a shadow I hadn't seen before. When I pulled into my driveway, my porch light came on, and for a moment, I just sat there, looking at my front door. The same door where the eviction notice had been taped. The same door she had walked up to without fear, without hesitation, as if she owned the right to threaten me. I went inside, and the silence of my home wrapped around me. Usually it felt comforting. Not that night. It felt like the silence held a question. What is she planning next? I tried to distract myself by cleaning the kitchen, folding laundry, checking emails, but my mind kept drifting back to the folder Daniel showed me. One thing bothered me more than anything else. Why was my name highlighted? It meant I wasn't just another random target. I was the target. I didn't sleep again that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every interaction I'd ever had with Melissa. There weren't many. A few nods, a few short conversations, a complaint once about my trash cans being slightly visible from the street, something that took me 5 minutes to fix. Nothing serious, nothing personal. So why me? The next morning, I decided to watch the security footage again. Not because I needed proof she taped the notice. I already had that. But because I wanted to understand her behavior, her body language, her confidence. I watched the clip slowly. She looked around before approaching my door, not to see if anyone was watching, more like she was checking if her plan was unfolding smoothly. She stood still for a moment, holding the paper in her hand, reading it one last time before taping it up. Her expression wasn't neutral. It wasn't annoyed. It was pleased with herself. That bothered me more than the notice itself. I decided not to confront her. Daniel warned me not to. He said, when someone abuses power, confrontation only feeds their ego. So I kept my distance. But she didn't. The pressure began almost immediately. That same afternoon, I found another paper in my mailbox. This one wasn't an eviction notice. It was a reminder of community rules. Highlighted sections, printed in bold, underlined text. A message without saying it directly. I am watching you. I threw it in a drawer, trying not to give her power. But the next day, it continued. I walked outside to water my plants and found Melissa standing on the sidewalk across the street, phone in hand, pretending to take a picture of a tree. But every few seconds, she would look in my direction. Not quick glances, long ones. I ignored it, or tried to. But by the end of the week, 3 more reminders showed up, and a letter claiming I had ignored multiple notices, even though the only real notice was the fake eviction she created. I felt trapped. Every time I stepped outside, she was there, leaning on her porch railing, standing in her yard, walking slowly past my driveway, always with that same look, the look of someone who believed she had already won. One evening, around 6, I heard a knock on my door. Not loud, not aggressive, just a steady, firm knock. My stomach dropped. I looked through the peephole and saw 2 people, the HOA president and another board member, both standing with folders in their hands. For a moment, I didn't want to open the door. I didn't want another attack, another accusation, another moment of feeling small. But I took a breath and opened it. The president gave me a polite smile. Good evening. We received some reports about your property, and we wanted to speak with you. Reports. Plural. Her reports. I stepped aside and let them in. They sat at the table, opened their papers, and started listing the supposed issues. Grass too long. Trash bins out too early. A noise complaint. An oil stain on my driveway. A fence that was not HOA approved. Every claim was false. Every single one. I explained everything with calm, steady words. I even pulled up security footage to show them. By the time I finished, the board member looked embarrassed. The HOA president looked uncomfortable. They knew something was wrong. They knew someone was lying. But they didn't say it directly. They stood up to leave, and the president said quietly, "I'll look into this." That was the first moment I realized Melissa's influence had limits. She could push. She could intimidate. She could fabricate stories. But she couldn't erase the truth. After they left, I called Daniel again. I told him everything, the visits, the papers, the surveillance-like behavior. He didn't hesitate. "I'm adding all of this to the file," he said. "She's getting reckless." Reckless. That was the right word. She had started out calculated, careful, controlled, but now she was slipping. And when people like her begin to slip, they get dangerous. 2 days later, something happened that made everything finally click. I overheard 2 neighbors talking near the mailbox. They didn't see me walking behind them. One said, "Melissa wants that corner lot. She's been talking about it for months. Says it would give her direct access to expand her backyard." The other replied, "She's trying to push him out. Same way she tried with the previous owner." I stopped walking. My heart started pounding. The puzzle finally made sense. My home wasn't the target. My lot was. She wanted my property line. She wanted control of the land behind my fence. She wanted me gone so she could take it. Suddenly, everything became clear. The fake complaints, the pressure, the surveillance, the eviction notice. She wasn't trying to punish me. She was trying to remove me, once and for all. And that's when I realized this wasn't going to stop on its own. This would only end when someone exposed her. And that someone was going to be us. I wish I could say that once I understood Melissa's motive, things got easier. But the truth is, knowing why someone is targeting you doesn't make the attack stop. It just makes every moment heavier. Every sound, every knock, every shadow near your window. You start noticing things you didn't notice before. You start questioning what's normal and what's not. And that's what the next stage felt like for me. A constant tension. a quiet pressure in the background of every day. After overhearing that conversation about the corner lot, I went home and stared at my backyard fence for a long time. I tried to see what she saw. That extra bit of land behind my fence, a few extra feet of open space. It wasn't a big area, nothing special to me, but to her it must have felt like something worth fighting for, something worth hurting people for. That thought bothered me more deeply than I expected. People fought for land in movies, not in quiet suburban neighborhoods, not over grass and fences. But there I was, living in the middle of someone else's obsession. The next morning, I woke up to a noise outside. Not loud, just a slight scraping sound. When I opened the blinds, I saw Melissa standing near the edge of her driveway, pretending to clean something. But she wasn't looking at the ground. She was looking at my house. Directly. She saw me, and she smiled. Not a friendly smile, a cold one, the kind that lets you know someone enjoys your discomfort. I closed the blinds. Later that day, I found yet another paper shoved into my mailbox. This one wasn't printed. It was handwritten. Please correct violations before we proceed with further action. No signature, no date, no explanation. Anonymous, but not really. I knew exactly who sent it. At that point, I stopped trying to handle things quietly. I started collecting everything. Every paper, every message, every recording, every incident. I put it all in a binder. I wrote dates, times, small descriptions. Not because I planned to confront her, but because Daniel told me something that stuck in my mind. When someone feels powerful enough to abuse authority, they eventually leave a trail. All we have to do is follow it. And he was right. The more I documented, the more I realized how far she was willing to go. 2 days later, I came home from work and noticed something strange. My trash bins were pulled away from the side of my house and placed in the middle of my driveway. Not knocked over, just placed carefully where the HOA could call it a violation. I checked my camera. There she was, walking up quickly, pulling the bins into view, walking away like nothing happened. It made my chest tighten with frustration. This wasn't incompetence. This was manipulation. She was manufacturing violations. That night, I told Daniel everything. I sent him the video. He watched it silently and said, "She's escalating. That means we're getting close." Close to what? I asked. The moment she makes a mistake she can't cover. And he was right again. A week later, something happened that became the turning point, the moment where everything shifted, even though I didn't realize it right away. It was a Friday evening. I had just returned from the grocery store. The sky was dim and orange, the kind of light that usually makes the neighborhood feel peaceful. But as I pulled into my driveway, I saw Melissa standing with 2 other neighbors. They were looking at my house, pointing, whispering. When I stepped out of my car, they all turned to face me. Melissa spoke first. "Your fence is out of compliance with HOA standards." Her voice was loud, firm, intentionally public. I took a slow breath. It was approved when I moved in. She crossed her arms. Well, things change, and right now it's a problem. The other neighbors looked uncomfortable, like they didn't want to be there. One of them cleared his throat and said, "Maybe we can discuss this at the next meeting," but Melissa snapped, "No, the rules are the rules." She wanted a scene. She wanted a confrontation. She wanted me angry enough to react poorly. I didn't give her that satisfaction. "Anything you have to say," I told her calmly, "send it in writing. To me, and to the HOA president." Her expression twitched. Just for a second. She didn't want a record of anything. She didn't want things official. She wanted control, but only in the shadows, where she could twist the truth. She didn't expect me to push things toward documentation. Without another word, I went inside. But the moment I closed the door, I felt something crack inside me. Not fear, not anxiety. Something stronger. Determination. I walked to my binder, added another page for fence incident, wrote the date and time, and attached a small note describing the neighbors watching. That night, after everything settled, something dawned on me. She wasn't just testing boundaries. She was trying to break me. She wanted me stressed. She wanted me overwhelmed. She wanted me to give up. She wanted me to pack my bags and leave before the board ever questioned her actions. And for a moment, I almost did. I sat on the couch, looking around my home, the place I'd saved for, worked for, dreamed about, and wondered if it was worth it. The stress, the tension, the The constant watching. Would it be easier to leave? But then I remembered Daniel's words. And I remembered the truth. She didn't deserve to win. Not like this. Not through lies. The next morning, I woke up early, made coffee, and sat down at my desk. I made a decision, a real one. Not just an emotional promise. A clear, solid decision. I was going to fight back. Not with anger. Not with shouting. Not with drama. But with proof. With patience. With truth. And the truth, as Daniel kept saying, was already on our side. That same day, he called me. His voice sounded more focused than usual. "I need you at the HOA meeting this Thursday," he said. "It's time." Time for what? I asked. For everything to come into the open. There was a pause on the call. A long one. I could hear him flipping through papers. Then he said something that made my skin prickle. "I reviewed your binder and compared it with the evidence I've been collecting. Melissa has crossed a legal line. Several, actually." My heartbeat quickened. "She doesn't know it yet," Daniel continued, "but she's about to lose everything she's been trying to use against you." I closed my eyes for a moment and let those words sink in. For weeks, I'd been walking around with this weight on my chest. This feeling that she was winning, that she was stronger, that she had the power. But now, for the first time since the eviction notice appeared on my door, I felt something lift. Relief. Hope. Maybe a little bit of justice, too. Thursday couldn't come fast enough. And deep down, I knew whatever happened at that meeting, it would change everything. For her. For me. For the entire neighborhood. Because her lies had finally caught up with her. And Daniel was ready to expose every single one. I woke up the next morning with a strange kind of silence around me. Not a peaceful silence. A heavy silence. A silence that feels like the world is waiting for something to break. I made tea, sat on the edge of my bed, and just breathed for a moment. Because I knew today was the final HOA hearing. Today, everything would come out. Today, every lie, every threat, every trick Karen used would finally face the truth. I was nervous, not scared, just tired. Months of stress drains you in ways you can't describe. But there was something else inside me, too. Something I didn't feel in a long time. A calm confidence. Because for once, I wasn't walking into that room alone. My lawyer, Adams, was already prepared. He had organized every file, every witness statement, every recorded conversation, every screenshot, every timestamp. He carried years of her abuse in one thick folder. And I carried the one thing she didn't expect, the truth. The walk to the HOA building, that walk felt different. Normally, when I went to those meetings, I felt like I was entering enemy territory. The building itself felt cold. The way people stared felt judgmental. The whole place felt like it belonged to them, not to us homeowners. But this time, I felt steady, stronger, like I was finally taking back something that was always mine. As I got closer, I saw her car in the lot. The same spotless silver SUV she bragged about in every conversation. And then, I saw her, standing near the door, talking fast, hands shaking a little, voice raised, just enough that you could hear the panic underneath the fake confidence. She saw me, and her whole expression tightened. Her eyes widened for a second, just a second, and then she looked away like she had something more important to do. But I could tell. She wasn't ready. She wasn't nearly as confident as she pretended to be. The room was different this time inside the meeting room. The atmosphere had changed. People weren't smiling with her. They weren't standing behind her. They weren't nodding at every little thing she said. Instead, they were looking at her with questions, suspicion, even frustration. Because the last few weeks, word had started to spread around the neighborhood. She wasn't enforcing rules. She was targeting people she didn't like. She was pushing personal grudges under the cover of authority. And I wasn't the only one who had come forward. Others had quietly spoken up. Others had shared what she did to them. Small stories, small issues, but all with the same pattern. And today, those voices were finally waiting to be heard. The meeting begins. Everyone sat down. The board members looked serious. Some even looked embarrassed. She sat across from me, wearing her usual tight-lipped smirk, but it didn't reach her eyes. Adams leaned toward me. "Stay quiet unless they ask you something," he whispered. "I'll handle everything." I nodded. The HOA president cleared his throat. This meeting is regarding the eviction notice issued to Mr. Razak, he said slowly, almost regretfully, and the additional claims submitted by board member Karen. Her smile twitched. She sat up straighter. Thank you, she said, like she was about to perform on stage. But Adams gently placed the folder on the table. A soft thump. Her eyes locked onto it instantly. You could see her throat tighten. He didn't even open it yet, but she already knew what was inside. Adams starts speaking as counsel for the homeowner. Adams began calmly. I'd like to address the eviction notice first. He pulled out the first document. The notice contains violations that do not exist in the HOA rulebook. He placed the rulebook next to it. The dates listed here don't match any official records. He placed the community calendar beside that. And most importantly, he lifted his eyes and looked at the entire board. This signature is not legally authorized for eviction notices. The room fell completely silent. Karen looked down at her hands. Her fingers were shaking. He continued. We have emails proving the homeowner was approved for everything he was accused of. We have messages showing harassment. We have recordings of her threatening to fabricate violations. We have timestamps showing she entered private property without permission. And we have witness statements from neighbors who have also experienced similar targeting. He opened the folder fully. Pages and pages. Dates. Screenshots. Logs. Names. Signatures. Everything. He placed them on the table, slowly, like dropping hammers one by one. Her face slowly drained of color. The board finally sees the truth. The HOA president looked shocked. Another board member rubbed his forehead. Someone whispered, "Oh, God," she snapped. "That's taken out of context. He's twisting it. You don't understand." Adams didn't even look at her. He just pulled out one more sheet. A printed transcript. A short one. Her voice on record. I don't care if he did everything right. I want him out. The entire room froze. She knew she was done. You could see it in the way her body slumped back, in the way her eyes darted around, searching for anyone to defend her. No one did, because now everyone finally saw who she really was. The decision after reviewing the documents. The board stepped out of the room for 10 minutes. She didn't look at me once. She was shaking. Adams leaned back calmly, checking his notes like he already knew the outcome. When the board returned, the president spoke carefully. We officially dismiss all accusations against the homeowner. The eviction notice is void, and we are removing Karen from her position on the board, effective immediately. Her mouth fell open. You can't. I've been on this board for 8 years. This is ridiculous. You're making a mistake, but no one listened. She had lost all authority the moment the truth came out. And I finally felt like I could breathe again. The aftermath, she stormed out of the room. No dramatic screaming. No insults. Just pure humiliation and disbelief. The kind that hits when someone realizes their power is gone. Some neighbors came up to me afterward. A few apologized for staying silent. A few thanked me for standing up. A few said they were relieved someone finally stopped her. And as we walked out of the building, Adams looked at me and said, "She won't bother you again." He was right. She avoided me completely after that. No more notes. No more complaints. No more fake violations. Just silence. Real silence. Peaceful silence. For the first time in months, I finally felt at home in my own home again. The final moment that evening, I sat on my porch. Same house. Same street. Same neighborhood. But everything felt lighter. Because justice didn't come from shouting. Or fighting. Or fear. It came from patience. From evidence. From standing your ground. From knowing you're right. Even when someone tries to crush you. And as the sun set over the quiet street, I realized something. Sometimes the biggest battles in life don't happen on loud stages. They happen in small rooms, around long tables with simple truths. And sometimes winning doesn't feel like victory. It just feels like peace.